Now, in order to beat the 15 minutes, I'm going to set a tone with a number of research questions that informs my background and my research. So I'm going to quickly read at least a page of my paper. There are political and philosophical tensions surrounding attempts by successor governments and international actors to deal with the past human rights atrocities and to prevent future such atrocities, as well as theoretical debates over the source of state violence and the place of human rights in transition from war to democracy. Cases from the most prominent attempts to deal with the recent human rights atrocities, for example, the genocide in Rwanda, human abuses committed during the Bosnia War, 1995, Salvador Civil War, 1992, the struggle of apartheid in South Africa, and authoritarian repression in Brazil and Chile, 1970s and 80s, elucidate many of the difficult issues surrounding alternative choices in seeking to address past human rights violations. Together, these cases show the many complexities of post-conflict issues such as post-war reconciliation, truth commission, non-governmental campaigns, international tribunals, gendered and racist justice, and police and judicial reform. Now, should crimes against humanity and gross human rights violation always be punished? If so, how should they be punished? What if peace or democratization is impossible unless amnesty is granted to those responsible for atrocities? Is public truth-telling of past atrocities more important for victims and for reconciliation than holding human rights trials? If we care about building the rule of law and preventing future conflicts, should we focus instead on building new legal cultures and humane police and judicial institutions? These are some of the issues that inform my research. So there are ethical and political dilemmas confronting national level and international actors seeking to address past atrocities and to construct post-transition societies which can avoid repeating those atrocities. Allow me to sort of illustrate this by talking about Rwanda and South African cases post-1994, the same countries. In South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, was an attempt to try to heal a wounded nation through truth-telling. Although quite controversial, the TRC gave a voice to those whose lives were affected by apartheid. Victims were allowed to share their personal experiences with the entire country, which afforded them a sense of agency. While many people had mixed feelings about the Truth Commission and its goals, many also recognized the value of the truth-telling process, which has not always existed in formal criminal trials. In many instances, criminal trials fail to raise the consciousness of outsiders, and they often bypass victims in their pursuit of justice. South Africa has given victims a public voice and also brought the vast range of experiences from both perspectives of the oppressors and the oppressed to the forefront of the national discourse on healing, forgiveness, and rebuilding South Africa. In November 1995, the TRC became emblematic of the shift from apartheid to democracy. South Africans were able to learn what had happened to their loved ones, and in some cases, why it happened. In other words, the African National Congress prioritized national reconciliation over prosecuting and punishing perpetrators. In contrast, Rwanda has put more emphasis on justice than truth-telling. In other words, no peace without justice. This is understandable given the nature of the crime of genocide, an attempt to wipe out a segment of the population. As some Rwandan researchers claim, most of the truth in Rwanda is known because the killings took place in broad daylight and between neighbors. The Rwanda government argues that in order to stop impunity and future crimes against humanity, genocide perpetrators, including those who committed past human rights violations, have to be tried and prosecuted according to the law. However, it offered a plea bargain, and the perpetrators were divided into categories which were mentioned before. I'm not going to go there. Now, the Gacaca jurisdiction, adapted to traditional mechanism of conflict resolution, has enabled truth-telling, which may lead to forgiveness and reconciliation gradually. Actually, I talk this reconciliation, I talk about cohabitation, because you need to cohabitate, and cohabitation leads to reconciliation, because it takes two to tango. Most importantly, Gacaca courts contributed to the rebuilding of the social fabric that was destroyed by the genocide. It's a forum where survivors and perpetrators faced each other. In some villages, the rapprochement did not work, but in others, it has worked well. Now, I started, in my paper here, I actually talk about justice reform in Rwanda, an overview of the Rwandan judiciary, which has been addressed. I talk about domestic justice and problems at first post-genocide Rwanda, and then, as you would imagine, I'm an anthropologist, and I believe in local knowledge. So it's a local understanding of genocide. So I do from traditional Gacaca to Gacaca jurisdiction. So I start pre-colonial Gacaca, how it worked, how it is ingrained in the culture, and that it is not only a forum, but the language used, not Kinyarwanda, the language used is understandable to Rwandans. I go back to how the first government used what they called administrative Gacaca, how it was transformed and used and misused. And then the initiative of people after the genocide, which I call new Gacaca, when people themselves started Gacaca. Gacaca is not a government conception. The government profited to get Gacaca because people went to address their problems in Gacaca. There was no judiciary, as it has been pointed out. So I take that journey in showing how Gacaca is meaningful until the organic law, when it was also enabled to judge genocide crimes. In my research on the mass participation in the genocide, like I ground the Gacaca from the pre-colonial, I went to Rwanda and I said, I was here, I'm going to Rwanda. I said, no, nobody will tell you. They say Rwanda, they don't talk about ethnicity. It is in my thesis. I'm a Tutsi. Going to face mostly Hutu perpetrators. But they said, no, they won't tell you anything. In anthropology, it is data. So I went and I said, look, I'm going to target the Avuis, or those who have committed genocide. Those who had agreed. Agreed, as they say in Rwanda. I had 3 questions. What is genocide? I really didn't believe that you talk on the radio and somebody takes a machete and it cuts somebody, the cause. So the role of the media. And then the last one, so what? Now, how do we move away as Rwandans? So I did my interviews in Rwandan prisons, and my fear of telling me, I actually was told more than I wanted to hear. I was doing my PhD thesis, so I wanted academic and get out in there. So everybody I asked told me, you want me to tell you which Igitero I participated in. Igitero means, it's a loaded word, okay? It means attack, impregnate, throw, whatever. So I went back and I said, I need to understand why this mass collection. Because like the toy in South Africa, the necklacing, wherever, so everybody was in a group, so there's no responsibility. So I went in the literature and traced the Igitero to pre-colonial Rwanda. where the king would say, we wanted to cut down the animals, therefore go hunting. The way the Ibiterani pre-colonial Rwanda worked, it's identical to how people were killed in Rwanda. You would, thrust them from the bush, like they share the meat, the others would chase the victims, come down, and then say how good they were and get rewarded. So that's how I went to understand in 5 minutes. So the point I want to really put forward on the table is, you cut a cloth according to your size. In Uganda, their children, they forgive. They forgive and forget. In Mozambique, they do rituals and things go on. So the decision which post-conflict nations take, that's why in my papers, which you can read, I wonder where now you are legal people, but I wonder whether the Western system of justice really fits within that context. I respect due process. I worked in New York Federal Court as an interpreter in the bombing of East African embassies. It took 7 months. And they said, we killed the infidels, given another opportunity to kill, but it took 7 days. So should Rwanda give in 200 years in the name of due process, and Rwandan expectancy is 50 years if you're lucky. So people have to decide how they deal with their past. That's the point. Another thing of human rights issue. Maybe you have answers. Is it right not to jam a radio that is inciting people to kill in the name of freedom of speech? What about the freedom of life? So those are the things I struggle with, and I'm doing research and I'm continuing, and I'm writing from Igitero, I've just explained to you, to Gacaca jurisdiction. Chair, thank you for your patience.